We are here once again at a rather gloomy looking AXA Trainer Centre, but I have to admit the atmosphere here has been anything but this morning. Quite lively in the room before Arne Slot arrived, and that jovial nature continued throughout his press conference here. Now, with it being a League Cup game, it's not surprising to see that most of the conversation centred around rotation and team news, and with so many injured players and so many potentially new players coming into the side, that was the clear main focus of everyone in the room. And Arne Slot gave some very interesting answers to some of those questions. He gave a really fascinating answer about Federico Chiesa, as well as one about Giorgio Mamardashvili, so watch out for those. But also, he gave a very, very good answer to my question once again. I may have to start getting my coaching badges at this stage, but we'll discuss that and all of that a little bit more when I'm back in the lab. Hello everyone, we are back home, safely tucked up warm back in the lab. It was starting to rain outside, so frankly I didn't really want to spend too much time down there, but I'm back here and ready to go through all of the details of Arne Slot's pre-match press conference ahead of the League Cup game against Brighton. Now, as I mentioned previously, it was quite a fun atmosphere within the room, and maybe I'm biased because me and Arne had a good few jokes together about my question around Darwin Nunez and his potential replacements, but we'll get to that. As is always the thing, we normally start at the very top of the press conference, and the first question he was asked was about the dearly departed Erik Ten Hag. And it was kind of interesting to see that while Ten Hag was Manchester United manager and Arne Slot was Liverpool manager, there was quite a little bit of tension there. There was maybe a few needle in some of the questions that were asked about him in the lead up to the game itself. But now that Ten Hag is no longer a rival, the human side was able to come out, and this is something that we see quite a few with the top level managers, is that there is always a professional rivalry, but essentially they all understand how difficult it is to do what they do. So when one of them loses their job, they always kind of feel for the human side of it. He mentioned him, he mentioned his family, he mentioned his great record in the Dutch league with Ajax, and that he probably will be back in a job very soon. I suspect he will, although probably not in England. Anyway, that's enough about Manchester United. Let's talk about Liverpool, shall we? And the first question he was asked, as is often the case in these press conferences, was around team news. And there was mixed news, I think it's fair to say. Sounds like Conor Bradley will be training again, which means that he's definitely come into contention to either play some minutes against Brighton or maybe even start this game coming up, which is fantastic news for him and probably great news for Trent as well, because it means he gets a bit of a blow. The blows though are with everybody else, so still no sign of Alisson, still no sign of Jota, still no sign of Harvey, Elliott, still no sign of Chiesa. Now with the first three of those, Slot was asked later on in the press conference whether or not we'd see any of them before the international break, and he said no, which is a bit of a blow, in particular when it comes to Harvey Elliott, because earlier reports were saying that he was trying to make it back for the previous international break. So for him to miss this whole run will be obviously a blow to him, but understandably, when they're having a lot of injuries at the moment, you want to make sure that the people coming back are ready to come back and up to full fitness. There's no point rushing them back and then having them re-injured or not up to their full standards. So it's a cautious approach, but probably the right one for Harvey. He'll be gutted though. With Jota, it's another interesting one, isn't it? Because he's sneakily almost gone into another one of those situations that we often see with Jota, where we just don't know how long he's going to be out for. We don't know how badly he's injured. He could come back in a couple of weeks, he could come back in a couple of months, and yeah, the conversation once again has come round to his availability. It's a hot topic in Liverpool world. I don't think there's been a season of his Liverpool career where this conversation hasn't come up around someone saying, oh well, he's too injury prone, we need to cut loose, we need to kind of upgrade, we need a new striker in January. I personally don't think that the club are thinking that way, but it's interesting to see that it's once again come up despite all what we heard about the potential brand new medical department that Arne Slot was bringing with him. Although, in fairness, and this is something that hasn't been mentioned elsewhere, I'm wondering if no one else actually noticed it. Jota actually caused this injury himself. He was the one who pulled Tosin Adebayo down on top of himself. in the interest of trying to get a red card for him in a similar situation as to what happened with William Saliba at Bournemouth the day before. So I get why he did it, but as he's sitting there nursing those bruised and probably slightly broken ribs, considering how long he's been out, I hope he has to think about this and about whether or not he really needed to do that. Anyway, so Jota won't be playing against Brighton, but Slot was asked about some of the guys who possibly would be playing, and he kind of split his decisions in terms of who he was going to explicitly name and who he wasn't. Wataru Endo was name checked. I believe he will come in. Joel Kwanzaa was name checked. I believe he will come in. Joe Gomez as well. I believe he will come in. Those ones are probably quite easy. Costa Tsimikas, it's interesting because I suspect before the Arsenal game, everyone would have just assumed he'd come in. But now maybe that there's an argument that you need him for the league game. So maybe we'll see him splitting the duties with Andy Robertson across this game. We'll have to wait and see on that. In midfield, alongside Endo, you've got the likes of Tyler Morton, Trainioni potentially coming in. But one thing Slot was keen to mention was that the approach that he took for the West Ham game, where there was 10 changes from the previous league game against Bournemouth, he said he's unable to do that because of the injuries. So again, that's a fascinating insight, because you have the likes of Morton and Leone, who in theory could come in, and we could have seen a really experimental Liverpool side. But as it stands, it sounds like he doesn't quite trust a lot of those younger players to come in and start even a game like this in the League Cup against Brighton. So I expect to see probably more first teamers being asked to go again than most of us will probably be comfortable with, but that's the kind of situation that happens when injuries kick into a squad. The margin for error is massively reduced. I haven't mentioned the forward options yet specifically, because that was the question that I asked Arne Slot. So let's hear a little bit more about that now, shall we? Hi Arne, you mentioned after the Arsenal match your admiration for Darwin Nunez and his ability to come in and play 3 games after not having played a lot, and to play with such energy and aggression. You also kind of mentioned he was the only recognised striker available. So with that in mind, I was wondering about some of the other options. We saw Cody Gakpo play 15 minutes at the end of the game against Leipzig, but he seemed to have been a little bit more rejuvenated in his old left wing role. We've also seen Luis Diaz and Mo Salah play centrally during their Liverpool career. I noticed Jayden Danns was walking into the building earlier today. I wonder whether or not he's come in to play, if he's training with the first team this year.
You could become the manager over here. Or do we have any other option to play as a 9 as well? Because you're giving me a lot already, but...
I mean, I'm not offering my own services, that's for sure.
Okay. I don't know if that's smart. No, I think about Darwin, I think I gave him credit for the fact that he worked so hard in previous weeks where he didn't play a lot, to be able to play 3 times in a row, in I think three games in 8 days. So that says a lot about him, but it also says a lot about the quality of our performance staff and medical staff, that we were able to give him the right sessions, to prepare him in the right way. But you always need the player to buy in, because you can give him the right sessions, but if he doesn't give everything, then it's very difficult for him to do what he did. So also with him, it was a good thing that his ban for the Uruguay team was cancelled, so he could play their 2 games. That helped probably as well for him to play the way he did. And I'm not talking about the quality he played with, but the intensity he played with, and the quality was also good. So there was a positive thing. Yeah, it is a pity that Diogo Jota is not available and Federico Chiesa is also not available, because they were, in my opinion, the most logical number 9s. Maybe not in yours, but still we have some other options with the ones you just said.
Oh, Arnie, we have jokes, don't we? Now, don't get me wrong, I love the fact that he seems happy and comfortable with having a laugh and a joke with me. But this time I picked up on the fact that he was using those jokes as a way of avoiding answering my question. You thought I missed it, but I didn't. Because I obviously asked him about Jayden Danns, who I had seen earlier that day walking into the building. I asked him about the potential for Luis Diaz and Mo Salah to be central striking options. He kind of skirted past that part and wanted to focus more on Darwin Nunez and obviously the aforementioned absence of Diogo Jota. But we did get some good stuff regarding Nunez. Again, about his ability to be able to go again and come in from what represented the cold a little bit. He hadn't played a lot in the earlier games. To come in and to play so much so soon with such energy and with such aggression, I think it's a real credit to him. And Slot was happy to praise him, as well as the medical staff and coaching team who've helped him to get to that level. He did also make a shout out to the fact that his Uruguay international ban was reduced, which meant that he was able to get some minutes for his international team, and that kind of follows the same theme that he mentioned when he was talking about Wataru Endo, and the fact that the players who aren't able to play as much as they would like are being not only really professional and getting on with things in training, but when they are called on in games, but also they're getting minutes for their international teams, so they're able to keep up that rhythm going. It's something that is clearly very important to him. He was also asked once again, like last press conference, about the struggles of a lot of games in a short period of time. I believe it's 5 games in 11 days, and once again he gave praise to the medical staff. But he did also once again mention the fact that the last 3 opponents have all had a day longer to prepare. Now this clearly says to me that this is something that has been, well, not quite gnawing at him, but he knows that it's something where his team are at a disadvantage, and he wants to make sure that we within the press pack and you within the football fan base are all aware that if there's maybe situations where energy is not quite, or intensity is not quite where it should be, then there are potential reasons for that, which is fair. I mean, it's prerogative of the manager to make sure we're all aware of the situation as we see it. But I think it's just a fascinating, interesting little nugget, the fact that he's really keen for us to know all about that part of the thing. Speaking about Federico Chiesa, as I was earlier, he had some things to say about not only his recovery, but about the rumours about a loan back to Italy. I'm quite glad that this was brought up, actually, the second part. The first part, it's a real shame, it really is, but there's a vagueness about the way we talk about Chiesa and his injury issues. Obviously, Slot mentioned the fact that he's missing the pre-season, but he also made mention of the fact that he was coming in and coming out, so his recovery from injury is not a linear line. And frankly, we've seen this quite a few times with Liverpool players in the past. I think Curtis Jones has had similar issues, Naby Keita, Thiago, Stefan Bajcetic, even going a bit further back, Nathaniel Klein had similar situations where you weren't quite sure how close to the comeback they were going to be, and then maybe while there wasn't a full setback, there had to be a reduction in the training and how much they were able to do. So it makes it really difficult to assess. Slot said he didn't want to put pressure on Chiesa by giving him a time or a date by when we expect to see him back. So it's a very softly approach they're taking with him, which again, I think is possibly frustrating for us as fans, but it's absolutely the right decision to make for the players' welfare and for hopefully the welfare of the squad, because we want him to be able to be fit and firing. And if that means that we have to wait until deeper into the season for that, so be it. Let's make sure that as much as possible, this is the only time that Federico Chiesa is out of the picture, rather than him coming back and then having to go out again and coming back and having to go out again. We've already got one forward doing that. We can't really afford for it to happen with both of them. Sorry, for it to happen with another one. But then he was also asked about Giorgio Marmadashvili, the goalkeeper out on loan at Valencia, and again a little bit of a nod to the fact that he's a very busy man. He said that he hadn't noticed, oh no shit, let's do that one again. Keeping the theme of around injuries and players coming in, he was asked a really interesting question towards the end of the press conference around getting the balance right between the players who were sent out on loan, and there was quite a few young players who were out on loan, sent out on loan in the summer transfer window, and having players around the building in case of an injury crisis such as the one we got at the moment. And I mean, Slot was honest about it. He says it's a very hard thing to predict at the start of the season with players who are showing promise but have a very key element in their development. Do you want them to be able to be in the building, learning his training methods and maybe not playing as much as they'd like and as much as they should be, or to be out playing regularly, getting up that rhythm and getting that understanding of what it takes to be a regular week in, week out footballer. And obviously with most of them, the decision was taken over the latter. He made particular mention of Stefan Bajcetic and of Ben Doak. There's a line that's come out which I'm sure is going to be clipped and quoted quite a few times, where he was saying about maybe he should get Ben Doak back. For those of you who've just seen the quote written down, it looks very different to how it did when it was coming out of his face. There was a wry smile on his face. I don't think there's any chance that Ben Doak is going to be coming back from his loan early. He obviously made mention of the coaching staff both at Middlesbrough and at Salzburg, who are doing good things with their young players. So I don't think there's any hint. If you're a Middlesbrough fan and you're watching this, don't be worried. He's going to be there for as long as the contract says he's going to be there. And for Liverpool fans, we are just going to have to wait. Maybe Jadon Danns could potentially be a solver to this issue, at least in terms of being a bench option at certain points in the near future. We'll have to wait and see. Someone else who's certainly not coming to Liverpool this season is Giorgio Mamardashvili, and Slot was asked about him and his fantastic performance over the weekend for Valencia. He did confess that he hadn't seen it. Again, there's another little nod to the fact that he's a very busy man. He mentioned the fact that he was doing press conferences, matches, and maybe a little bit of time for training as well. Again, reading between the lines, he could probably do with having some more time on the training pitch with his players. You get the sense that that's really where he comes alive, and he's probably missing out on the fact that he doesn't get that much in this kind of ridiculously packed, busy run of games. But that is the life of a top-level manager. I'm pretty sure that he's used to it by now. It would have been a similar situation with Feyenoord when they were fighting in the Champions League. So he'll be absolutely used to it. He might not like it, but he'll get used to it. And I feel like that's kind of how we have to deal with the current situation around injuries. Finally, he was asked about Brighton themselves, and he said that they've always had a good idea about football, which is very similar to what Klopp always used to say about them. They're very much seen as the model club for a lot of people within football. He made mention of their recruitment, the fact that they always seem to get it right, even on a lower budget. Again, something that always kind of is flagged up within other football clubs and other football minds as something really special. So he's expecting a tough game at the weekend, midweek, and of course at the weekend when we play them in the Premier League. But as was always the case, we'll have to wait and see exactly how tough that game is, and we'll also have to wait and see with bated breath exactly who will be playing in goal for Liverpool, because the last question that I wanted to cover was between the choice between Kevin Kelleher and Vítězslav Jaros. And Slot was asked this question. He made mention of the fact that he wanted to see how Kelleher was feeling, how fit he is or isn't before making that decision. He again made mention of the fact that he's played a lot of games recently, and if I was a betting man, which I'm not, but reading between the lines, I would not be surprised to see Jaros between the sticks on Wednesday night. We'll have to wait and see. But as always, thank you for listening to my thoughts here. If you want to hear my written thoughts, my latest article's out on my Substack page. I'll be putting a picture of it at the end of this video, so you can go click on the link inside and go and find out all of my writing, and maybe subscribe to me over there. It's probably worth your while. In fact, it's definitely worth your while. Trust me, it's definitely worth your while. And I'll be back with another one of these videos on Friday. See you soon.